Hey, welcome to my house. I think I finally got everything in place and decent lighting, and hopefully the phone won't ring. Thank you all for watching this, and I know most of you are doing this for my upcoming wedding, but these rural travel tips should help anyone else. It's also coming up for our lovely weekend and Labor Day. Gotta enunciate my L's. But we need your tourist dollars, so please come up. But when you come up, please also keep these things in mind, especially if you are coming from the city. I can't believe it's been 6 years since I moved up here, but I've definitely learned a lot. So we'll start with number one, which is simply don't assume that your phone and your GPS are going to work anywhere. Most of the time they do, and I'm going to preface this with this may not apply to all rural areas, especially in the Midwest where it's more flat. But where I live in the northern areas, we have a lot of ridges, and thank you, glaciers. And we have issues like at my house where we're too close to the canyon wall, so we can't get like cell service in the house, but we can get it if we go further out on the lake because it's open. So I mention that because a lot of times if you don't print out a backup copy of directions, like it's the 1990s, you may find yourself stranded or asking for directions. Which will bring me to point number two, or sub-point one. If you ask for directions, listen to what the people say, because a lot of the times they're going to give you more accurate directions than what is in your GPS if your GPS is working. I mention this especially because, again, in rural areas, Google doesn't drive around out here nearly so often, maybe once a decade. So if we have new construction, you won't see it marked. And if there's any sort of, we'll get to this in a second, seasonal roads or not necessarily well-maintained roads, you're also not going to know that. So I highly recommend if you do ask for directions, pay attention. Don't just sort of nod your head once they give you an address. Because again, your maps may not work. Print out maps that show, if you've gone too far past the place and bring them with you. Because again, your phone may suddenly drop off of service. Speaking of which, if you are going from the main freeway out to my house, there is a dead zone that you will drive through. It is totally okay. It's right around, just past the county line. You'll see a tower, and then you get cell service again. It's great. All right. So the one plus of coming out to at least this particular state is that we have very fast freeways. And I mentioned this again mostly for my family that is from out of state. We've recently increased our speed to 75 up here. So y'all are going to have to try to drive 80 if you take any of the major freeways. And hopefully you won't get mown down because I drive 80 and people still come up on my rear end in the right lane because we are crazy people up here. And I'm just like, whip around me. I'm too old for this and I'm just trying to get where I'm going. So heads up, try to hold the foot down to 80 and do your best. The downside, though, especially for those of you that are like flying in from north and coming south to see me soon, your guys are mostly going to be dealing with 2-lane roads. There's a little bit of freeway, but then eventually it devolves into 2-lane roads because you're out in the country. And in those 2-lane roads, you do have the possibility of getting stuck behind a tractor or a semi-trailer. And heads up, there are passing lanes. They eventually come up. You'll eventually see a sign for something that says like in 2 miles. We'll open up for passing lanes. When that happens, get around whatever the heck you're stuck behind. Getting stuck behind tractors is very frustrating. I've gone off about it a few times to my farmer friends, and they're like, hey, that guy in the tractor is trying to move just as quickly as you do, and he has just as much important things to do. So don't be mean to him. He just can't go as fast as he wants either. But they are hard to get around, and you definitely want to get around them. It seems like an eternity sometimes if you're trapped behind a tractor. And while you're driving up and down those lovely freeways, or not freeways, depending on how far north you go, I highly recommend, because especially if you're a lady, bathrooms aren't necessarily plentiful. And if you are from the city, you probably are not super experienced unless you happen to be a girl that likes to hover all the time. And peeing standing up. And I know it's a weird thing to mention, but it's important. And after house hunting for like several months out in the boondocks when we were trying to buy this place, I discovered I'm not so good at peeing standing up myself, at least not without missing stuff. Let's put it that way. So free product endorsement. Not quite sure how much you can see that, but the Go Girl works really well. It's essentially a little bitty, don't know if you can see that shape there over in the icon, but It's essentially a little plastic vinyl piece of equipment that, if you are born female and don't have external hanging genitalia, allows you to go on the side of the road and do what the cisgender males like to do. And it comes in much, much handy, especially if you're in the backwoods and you're holding out for a gas station. I'm the person who always wants to go to the gas station, because again, can't be standing up. But I keep a Go Girl tucked in my purse, so now I don't have to worry nearly so much. If you are trying to go on the side of the road, I highly recommend, again, find a country road. If you're on a main drag, drive off onto like a little dirt road and go find yourself a spot. You probably don't want to be just standing next to the car, but gotta go. There is also, I got this on thegrommet.com. There is also a cardboard disposable version. It's not called the Go Girl, it's a different product. I mentioned that simply because this is reusable, which is lovely if you are the type of person who reuses things. But if you're squeamish about like rinsing off your own urine, which I recommend you do at the nearest gas station after you use one of these, otherwise you put it in the thing and it gets stinky. Yeah, you may want to use a disposable. The disposables, I think, were something like $15. And I was like, $15 for a single-use product, not my jam. But I'll gladly pay like $25 for something and carry in my purse and know, yay, I can pee wherever I want. Anyway, this becomes way more important than you think, ladies. Just let me tell you. Because when you're out in the middle of nowhere and you're like, where can I go? Which brings me back to those of you who haven't been in Girl Scouts. Always remember, leaves of 3, let it be. Check for poison ivy before you pee. Yeah. There's also poison oak, but again, the leaves of 3 thing still applies. Don't wipe out anything you don't know. Yeah. Keep napkins in your car. If you pick up fast food, keep napkins in your car if you're not doing that already in the city. Yeah. Okay. Sorry to go to a dark and gross place, but these are things you are going to want to know, and if you can get a Go Girl before you come up here next week or so, I highly recommend it. All right. Brings us on, oh my god, 7 minutes already, to seasonal roads. I am so sorry this is going to be so long. Okay. Seasonal roads are essentially what they sound like. They have a nice sign in the front of them, black and white, that essentially says this is a seasonal road, and the state/county/local authorities don't plow it in the winter, which on its surface sounds okay, right? Yeah, okay. Seasonal roads vary anywhere from like a 2-track sort of cow path to well-maintained gravel structures that people actually pay to put more gravel down and you can drive through them. So if you are asking for directions, I highly recommend asking to avoid seasonal roads if at all possible. If you have an SUV or you are renting a car that you absolutely know can go into 4-wheel drive and you like off-road adventure, don't worry about it. But if you're asking for directions, these are definitely things that are not marked on your GPS. Your GPS will gladly send you from the back of Myers up a road that then goes to the forest roads that come to my house, and it's a real fun adventure if you like off-road adventures. Which brings me to point 2 about seasonal roads. Never drive down a seasonal road further than you can back your car up safely, because you may have to. I've learned this the fun way, basically getting stuck in the sand. So if you're going down a seasonal road and you're feeling like an adventure, just remember, and I've done this in a Buick, which is why I was in the sand. Drive your little sedan down the road, but never drive it further than you can safely back it all the way back out, because stuff does happen. All right, which will bring me to, stuff does happen. Fortunately, I can truncate some of this. Bring me to wildlife. Wildlife, it's great. Come to the country, see our lovely animals in the woods. They're great. Unfortunately, they are not so great at obeying any sort of traffic laws or indications whatsoever. Deer don't care. Just a heads up, they really don't. The most risky period for getting in an accident with a deer is within 90 minutes of dawn or dusk. So 90 minutes before the sun rises and like 90 minutes or so after, that sort of window. And same thing with sunset. The main reason, at least with sunrise, is they're getting up and they're doing their deer business and going out to forage. And the opposite true at sunset. They're, coming home to bed down and take a nap. So that's generally how deer work. However, as I always say, gotta have your life right with Artemis when you are driving through the woods at night, because deer don't care and they come out of nowhere. And I'm sorry, one of my family members is like threatening to go back up, like during the night drive. And if you are watching this, please don't do that. Please stay in my town. I know our hotels are not so nice, but it makes me worry when you're like, no, we'll just drive up an hour and a half in the dark. Bring me to point like 3 of that. Yeah, if you are driving at night in the dark, bring at least one other person. Both of you be on deer watch, stare at your side of the road, and you see any movement whatsoever, yell something. Deer are the worst. Turkeys, I recommend avoiding hitting turkeys if you can. Wild turkeys are a little bit smaller than, domestic turkeys that are raised for food. But they will put a pretty big dent in your car if you hit them. They fly. So if you can avoid hitting a turkey, it's great to avoid hitting a turkey. Anything smaller than that, for those of you who, again, are from the city and aren't used to dealing with wildlife, try not to get out of the road for it. And I know some of you in the back are like, that is so mean. If you can, straddle it. I did take off the back of like 3 porcupines in one night shortly after I moved up here. And I felt really bad about it because it was super dark and all I could do was like straddle them. You could hear it like hit the back of their spine going poof. So, yeah, still feel bad about that one. But you can't risk running your car off the road for, a squirrel or a porcupine or groundhogs or possum or badger. Again, if one of my family members that loves turtles is watching this, you can pull over and get a turtle out of the road. That is totally okay. I just recommend, because most of them are box turtles, getting a big stick and sticking it in its mouth before relocating him or her. Yeah. Stop for turtles. Turtles are cool, but small wildlife, especially if you're driving in the woods, and yeah, try to avoid hitting it, but do not dodge like squirrels and end up off the road. Please don't. Okay, last 2 points, and I know we are getting close to 15 minutes, so sorry to make you listen to me talk. I can't speak for all of rural America. I can only speak for our little areas, but and I'm not quite sure what the town above us is going to do because they're more tourist-based than we are. But at least out here, the mask mandate is sort of optional and always kind of has been. Nobody really enforces our masks, with the exception of where I work and medical places and a few other places. But for the most part, if you don't feel like wearing a mask, don't wear a mask. You want to wear a mask? Wear a mask. Some people are jerks to people who wear masks, but it tends to be the minority. So just a heads up, it is the Wild Wild West, and if you want to hand sanitize every 15 seconds, feel free. There are times I'm just like, wow, we're just, okay, cool, it's like 2019 up here. And unfortunately, because as much as I like the retro life, there are a few sad things about retro life that I wasn't anticipating, and I am going to mention, even though I know a good chunk of my family is coming up from the South, so seeing the Confederate flag probably shouldn't be a triggering point for you. But if you're unfamiliar with the Great White North, yeah, there's a reason we call it the Great White North. We need more diversity up here. And we also need people to not fly the stars and bars and or the they don't tread on me flag so much. Apparently they trigger some people. My boss was one of them, so he said, you might want to mention that. I came from East Texas, and even I, coming up here, am surprised at the sheer amount of stars and bars. So if you find that triggering, just heads up. There's a lot of it. Not quite sure what to make of that because I'm not Southern myself, but it's up here. And bringing to the last problem, be careful who you talk to and who you pull over with and who's looking at your stuff, just in general and in life. And the Great White North is biggest issue. Tends to be drug addicts, and they like to steal and they like to do stupid things. And if you can't tell what a meth head looks like, and I wish I didn't have to tell people this all the dang time, but yeah, they tend to be skinny, they tend to be sort of strung out, and they tend to be sort of gross looking, for lack of a better way of putting it. They don't bathe a lot, kind of stinky, teeth falling out. So anyway, if you encounter one of those fun people, just stay on your A game. I hate to admit that there's a lot of crime up here because of that, because I moved up here thinking we were all just chill and, leaving our doors unlocked and everything, and we are not. We do occasionally have nutballs that have drug problems to the point where they steal things and harm people. So try to avoid those people. But otherwise, come up. We need your tourist dollars.